Right, let's have a fun conversation then about the next Celtic manager. We've got a list of names here. I think it's the top 10 bookies' favourites. I'm going to get onto that in a wee second. But first of all, we should probably give John Kennedy the respect of discussing him for, I don't know, at least 30 seconds. Me and you have kind of given our opinion on this, John, about John Kennedy. Jackie, do you think John Kennedy is a contender, a realistic shout to be the next Celtic manager, or will he just be interim?
I think realistically it'll be interim. I think looking at it between now and the end of the season, I think the only way that would change if he does an unbelievable job in a short space of time and the fans are calling for him to be kept on and they can see a real change in the team and the players. That's the only way you could see it. Ideally, John would have had more experience on his own first before tackling, because it's a different animal from being an assistant or being a first team coach to go in and handling all aspects of that job, which is a pretty difficult job for your first one. So, I think it would have been better going away and learning his trade, getting a few years under his belt, and coming up and experiencing that first before jumping into the Celtic job.
I mean, that's something I've always thought is valuable, is to leave Celtic and then come back once you've maybe achieved something or had some sort of track record that you can hang your hat on. I mean, I see this less as the 7 or 8 games for him to become a Celtic manager, but perhaps 7 or 8 games that, puts him in contention for another manager's job in Scotland. Hibs, there was rumours Hibs wanted to appoint him before they brought Jack Ross in. So you could end up at a fairly high-profile club. And if he wins these 7 or 8 games, he does his chances of that no harm at all.
When he wins the league, he's going to be hard to turn down for anyone this season. Right, let's go on to the 10. I'll just shout these names out. How about that? I don't know if this is in order, John, is it?
Yeah, it is in order. Yeah, I've got it off of Odds Checker.
Right, okay. So Enzo Maresca, John Kennedy, Eddie Howe, Steve Clarke, Paul Lambert, Roberto Martinez, Sean Dyche, Frank Lampard, Martin O'Neill and Rafa Benitez. A pretty varied list there. Jackie, I don't know if this is a straightforward question or not, but is there an obvious candidate for you who you would like to be the next Celtic manager?
I think it's a difficult one. I don't think it's a complete opposite. I think that's quite a diverse group of names there. From my manager Martin coming back to Benitez, just being in China, who would probably be out the price range of the club. Eddie Howe, I've done my pro licence with Eddie over in Belfast, and I liked him. Done a good job at Bournemouth. He had a spell at Burnley, which didn't go too well. I think he had issues. He lost his mother at that point, which made it difficult for him. But he seemed to be settled more at Bournemouth. I like his style of football and his mannerism. He conducts himself well. Yeah, the only downside is would they handle the media and the stuff that surrounds Celtic. But you don't know until they were put in that environment. He was like big jobs before when he'd done a good job at Bournemouth. Arsenal's and the England job he was linked to as well. So I think Eddie's a good shout. Steve Clarke, that seems to be a rumour that's been going around for a bit as well. But obviously from the national team, it would probably be after the Euros, which doesn't help the club. For getting into the Champions League qualifiers and getting the team ready and ready for the start of the season, that would be a difficult one. There's another one, Enzo. I don't know enough about him. I always get a bit sceptical when I see a name that's branded around quite a bit when it comes left field. For me, I think it should be picked from a director of football. Should be appointed first. It's something I've said. It's funny because you heard Brendan Rodgers saying it this week when he was asked about it, and it's something I think the director of football should be appointed first, and he should be the one to put forward the manager, because he's the one that's going to work with them, and they have to work together along with the other backroom staff, and make sure that the club's a success moving forward.
The Brendan Rodgers comments were interesting, and for the reason that Brendan Rodgers never used to believe in the director of football, and had said, years ago that he wasn't a fan of it and the manager should be in charge of the football operations. And then by the time he left Celtic, I believe it was very much on the cards in terms of coming into Celtic. And I think the name that was bandied about for the director of football role, or sporting director role, was John Kennedy, with the blessing of Rodgers. And then Rodgers went to Leicester, and Kennedy would eventually become the assistant manager, and all those plans have been put on hold for 2 years. But his comments have been interesting, and I agree with him, and I agree with you, Jackie, that we need that person in place first to pick a coach who can work with these players. And the Enzo Maresca name's interesting. It has come from left field. I think perhaps some of it comes from the Fergal Harkin link from City. Obviously, he's been linked with the sporting director role, and he would know all about Maresca, because of the way they work together at City. So that whole affair is very interesting. But it's rarely a name on the bookies' favourites list, isn't it, Hamish? It seems to be that list of 10 names. That's the top 10 bookies list. We can't read too much into that list of names, can we?
No, I think if you're asking me if it will be any of those 10 or the field, anyone else on the planet, I'd say it's more likely to be someone probably not on that list. Enzo Maresca had a really good playing career. I was looking into it. He played for, I think, Sevilla and Juventus, and he's been assistant at West Ham, and he's obviously in charge of Man City's elite development squad now. So as much as his kind of coaching career or his managerial career has been quite short-lived so far, he's clearly highly rated and had a good playing career as well. So he's got a good reputation, especially in Italy and Spain. So it's obviously.
Have you heard any other names over the piece, Hamish or Jackie? Has anyone heard any other names? I've heard, there's people linking the Rennes manager Stepan. He's left them today.
Has he?
Yeah, he left. He left today. So, or when people are watching this earlier this week.
I'd love him. He's good.
So people are saying that. I've heard Carlos Queiroz mentioned as well, the former Colombia and Manchester United assistant manager. So there is a diverse list of names. Have you heard any rumours on the grapevine, Jackie?
No, just the ones you're talking about, and Patrick Vieira was mentioned. Rumours as well. I think there'll be a lot of people, and I think it's as I said, it's a good opportunity to put things in place just now. If the chief exec's not coming in until 1st of July, I think it's important you get a director of football in just now and start planning, looking at the squad over the last remaining games of the season, see what's needed, the new guy come in, and make sure we hit the ground running for next season.
I get the impression it may be a manager that we've not necessarily heard of, or if we have heard of him, he's not too well known. I just get the impression it could be like a Ronnie Dyler, someone like that who you've never heard of, and then immediately, you start seeing the reports, and then a couple of days later he's standing at Celtic Park with a scarf above his head. It could be that we get a director of football in, and then he brings in someone who he's worked with in the past, someone he knows and trusts, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing if it works out like that. But I'm not so sure it's going to be a box office name, an Eddie Howe or a Steve Clark or someone like that, or a Rafa Benitez or a Frank Lampard. I think it will be maybe someone lesser known, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. In terms of if we kind of move away from names and we move on to what kind of manager we think it should be, Jackie, if you could kind of design the ideal Celtic manager that you feel we need, if we've got, say, a director of football in place, would it be a manager who's a really good coach like Brendan Rodgers was, who can bring players on, someone who's a good man manager, or would it be someone who maybe took a step back like a Martin O'Neill did when you were there at the club?
Well, I think if he's not a coach, then you have to have somebody in your backroom team that is. I think Rangers are, I've seen Steven Gerrard talking about that. Steven Gerrard's the name and the manager, but he has people beside him that can coach. And Michael Beale, which he's praised over the last couple of weeks, about his coaching style. And I think you see that they're being coached. So if you're going to get a name, a manager where I think something like that, Neil would have been the ideal if somebody else was inside that was actually a proper coach and he would manage the team. So I think that's a big thing with with whoever they bring in, they have the expectations to know what's called for. So in terms of the structure with the players coming in, because the recruitment is going to be very important, as we know. We can see that how important it was this season, which hasn't worked. So the recruitment there with the players, so you're going to bring players in that are, in the price range that the club can afford. Then you need a good coach and manager to come on. And obviously with Brendan, we had that. That was his forte, was developing and bringing players on. Neil's not that kind of coach manager. He's more a man manager like Martin. So he needed somebody else to come in that could do that role.
Are either of you two worried that we've kind of left this too late for next season? Because when you think, Jackie's talking about the importance of recruitment there, and I agree, but realistically, a sporting director or a director of football coming in, it's going to take time for him to put in the processes and the different ways of sourcing players and scouting and recruiting players, unless he has a ready-made list of players ready to go. It's going to be difficult to revolutionise that department, and get players in the door before the transfer window shuts.
Yeah, I think the recruitment department will have a list of players on the radar just now for the summer, I'd imagine. I'd be surprised if they're not. I think it'll be the case of what players that they want to move on, what players are not going to renew their contracts that they need to sell in the summer. Edouard, Ayer, Christie, Rogic. So there's a good list of players there that, if they're not going to extend the contracts, don't see them starting the season with the club, maybe with the qualifiers and trying the Champions League first. So I think you have the squad there, what they've got to work with just now for next season. It needs a lot of players, needs a big turnaround. So I think the sooner the better.
Are you worried, Hamish?
Well, what is it, the 1st of March? If Celtic have got someone lined up as a director of football to come in the coming weeks, which I kind of feel maybe isn't quite as far out the reckoning as some people think, then you've still got, the whole of April, May, June, July, and then I think our first kind of competitive game's the end of July. So you've got like 4 or 5 months there. I know there's a lot of stuff needs to go in place, but I don't think all of that has to be in place for us to mount a title challenge next year. As good as Rangers have been this season, I do think we just need to improve certain aspects of the club. I think we obviously need to improve the player pool. I think improving the management department and having a better manager in will make a big difference. And the other things can come in time. They don't have to be short term. They can be long term things. So I'm not quite as down about that. But equally, I think we've got a big opportunity now between now and the end of the season to get these things into practice. And I just really hope the club aren't just seeing the next 3 months now that they've got Kennedy in us, we can just do what we want now. Law will leave and then we'll rebuild. I think we need to use the time we've got right now to start doing all this. Final question, Jackie, do you think the next appointment has to be a big name, has to be like a Brendan Rodgers or a Martin O'Neill to get the Celtic support back on side?
Not necessarily. I think it's got to excite the fans first and foremost. I think if it's put across in the right way, what the structure is and what it's going to be, I think and the fans buy into it and they can see that there's a process involved, not just bringing somebody in and hopefully the best. I think as I said, this season has been pretty different in terms of the recruitment. Things they probably wouldn't normally do just to try and secure the 10 in a row, and maybe went against the grain a little bit with some of the decisions they've made. Like the loan of certain players. And paying a lot of money for a loan for centre half that you wouldn't normally do. So I think a lot of things like that wouldn't happen moving forward. And as soon as the new guys in and they explain what the structure is and how they're going to take the club forward, and there's no doubt the fans will back that.
Yeah, there's an element of selling it almost, isn't there? And I think the Celtic sports knowledgeable and will recognise when someone genuinely progressive and someone who can take the club forward can come in. It's not. I don't think it's about the name necessarily. It's more about how the club present it to the fans, and if they present it in the manner of having the sporting director and then the coach working under him, I think fans would buy into that. But be interesting to see how they do it. I remember when Neil Lennon was given the permanent appointment. Him and Peter Lawwell travelled around the different supporters clubs and communicated in that way and went directly to the hardcore base of supporters to get them on side with that. So I'd be interested to see if something similar will come from Dominic Mackay when he comes into the club. There's a variety of options of how to do it. What's your take, Hamish? What do you want to see? Do you need a big name to get excited?
I don't think I need a big name. I think if anything's taught us something from the last wee while is that big names don't necessarily go on to become successes. And I'm obviously talking on the playing front. Shane Duffy was a big name, and he's not gone on to be a success. So I think it is more about the overall idea of who we get in. I think coming in with their own backroom team is huge, and that isn't negotiable this time. That just has to be the case. Whoever comes in has to come in with the team, like Brendan Rodgers did. I'm sure like Martin O'Neill did back in the day. Like Steven Gerrard got his team at Rangers. It can't be any more of this. We pick your coach and all that kind of stuff, your assistant manager. I think if all that's packaged in the right way, and I think it has to be someone who gets the fans excited. I know Mick McCarthy was mentioned in the press, and I'm not thinking for a minute that that's a genuine shout. But it has to be someone, at the other end of the scale to that, someone who can excite the support. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Eddie Howe. It doesn't have to be Frank Lampard. But I think even if it was someone, of the ilk of Enzo Maresca, sure, there'd be questions about him and whether he could handle it at Celtic, but at least it would give us, something to be excited about. I just hope the club do it properly. I hope there's no more leaving CVs and drawers and, giving your word to, former players or people Dermot Desmond likes. I just hope it's a proper process they go through and we end up with the best manager that the club can possibly get. Is that just about summed up for you, John?
I think so, yeah. That was a good wee discussion there. In terms of dream appointments, I think you asked me that last week, and I think the dream appointment for me would probably be Martinez and Maloney, but there's no chance of it happening. I mean, if I had to commit to one and there was no barrier to bring them in, I think that's the one that excites me most, just for the blend of what it is, the fact that they've worked together for a long time already. Maloney obviously has a history with Celtic. He was a coach at Celtic at one point, knows the processes, and I think Martinez plays a really exciting brand of football. Unfortunately, there's about as much chance of me becoming a manager than those two coming in.
I don't know, maybe you sell yourself short.
One there, that was obviously mentioned was Larsson. But a lot of what's happened there with Neil, he wouldn't want him to ruin his legend status at the club. But he's at one of the biggest clubs in the world at the moment, learning his trade, doing it that way under Koeman. It's one of them. You want to remember him for the goals and everything else, but I don't know if he would want it just now anyway. And seeing what's happened, but. There's definitely enough people out there that do want it.
I think he'd be very nervous about taking it, and I would be very nervous about him taking it. Because he has managed in Sweden as well, and I think he had a decent record in some places and struggled in others. So it would just be one of those where you'd be really uncertain about the job he could do. But I mean, he's working under Koeman at the moment, so maybe he's learning new tricks. A Larsson return, Hamish?
I don't think that would go down well with the support. And I don't think any former Celtic player will go down well with the support. I think after all the loyalty that was shown to Neil Lennon, and probably misplaced loyalty, if we're honest, for the last couple of months, I don't think the support would react too well to giving it to another Celtic man, especially when Larsson could tarnish his legacy. I noticed another former teammate of yours, Jackie, Paul Lambert, ruled himself out of the job just for that very reason. He didn't want to tarnish the positive memories he had as a player. So it has to be a non-former player for me. Right, guys, that was fun. Thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for watching. Let us know in the comments below who's your dream appointment. Give us your nightmare one as well, just to see if that comes to fruition. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you've not done it yet, and I'll speak to you soon.